The blue marble hung in space like always, but today something approached it that had never come before. Ships appeared near the moon, massive and strange, their hulls reflecting light in colors that hurt to look at. Inside the largest vessel, beings from 4 different worlds gathered around a viewing screen, studying the planet below with mixed feelings of curiosity and contempt. High Commander Sethril stood taller than the others, his scaled body catching the artificial light. His species, the Vostok, had led the Galactic Council for 10,000 years. Today they would offer Earth the same opportunity they had given to hundreds of worlds before. The same test, the same terms, and like most primitive worlds, Earth would likely fail. "Send the message," Sethril ordered, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "Let them know we have arrived." Down on Earth, in a conference room deep beneath Geneva, alarms were already screaming. Satellites had detected the ships hours ago. Military bases around the world had gone to high alert. Governments argued about whether to shoot first or wait. But before anyone could make that choice, every screen on the planet showed the same image. Sethril's face filled monitors from Tokyo to Toronto, his reptilian features impossible to misunderstand as anything from Earth. "People of Earth," he began, speaking in perfect English that somehow translated itself into every language simultaneously. "We are the Galactic Council. We come not as conquerors but as evaluators. Your species has reached the threshold of space capability. Now you must prove you deserve to join the community of worlds. You will participate in what we call the Apex Trial. Every species must demonstrate the evolutionary strength of their home world. You will present your most fearsome predator. We will present ours. The trials will show us whether Earth has produced life worthy of recognition." The message ended as suddenly as it began. Across the planet, people stood in shocked silence. Then the chaos started. News channels exploded with speculation. Scientists argued about evolutionary biology on live television. Religious leaders tried to find meaning in holy texts. Military commanders wanted to shoot the ships down. But one small group of people found themselves pulled into an emergency meeting that would decide humanity's response. Dr. Richard Berg arrived at the meeting room still wearing his field clothes, dirt from the tiger reserve still on his boots. He had been tracking a female tiger through the forest when armed soldiers appeared and told him the President of the United States needed to speak with him immediately. The helicopter ride to the airport, then the jet to Geneva, then the car to this underground facility had all happened so fast, he barely had time to process what was occurring. He entered a room full of people in expensive suits and military uniforms. Most looked terrified. Some looked angry. One woman in an Air Force colonel uniform studied him with sharp eyes as he sat down. "Dr. Berg," said a man with a name tag reading Ambassador Luis Okoye. "Thank you for coming so quickly. We need your expertise. The aliens want us to present Earth's apex predator for some kind of trial. The military wants to refuse to tell them humanity doesn't play these games. But our scientists tell us that might mark us as hostile. We need to participate, but we need to choose carefully. What do you recommend?" Berg looked around the table at all the serious faces. "What do you know about apex predators?" he asked. "They're the top of the food chain," said Colonel Patricia Hayes, the woman who had been studying him. "The most dangerous animal in an ecosystem. For Earth, that could be polar bears, saltwater crocodiles, or great white sharks. Personally, I think we should show them a grizzly bear. Something massive that sends a message." Berg shook his head slowly. "You're thinking about this wrong. Apex predators aren't just about size or strength. They're about evolutionary success, about adaptation, about intelligence. If we send them a crocodile, we're showing them a species that's barely changed in millions of years because it didn't need to. If we send a shark, we're showing them something that only works in water. We need to show them something that represents what made Earth special." "And what's that?" Okoye asked. "Competition," Berg replied. "Earth didn't have one apex predator. We had dozens, all competing, all evolving to counter each other. That pressure created something unique. Intelligence, adaptation, cooperation. If we want to show them what Earth produced, we need to show them a predator that evolved in the most competitive environment on the planet. So what do you suggest?" Hayes asked, her tone skeptical. Berg took a deep breath. "A tiger. Specifically a male Bengal tiger named Sher from the Rewilding Preserve in India. He's massive, intelligent, and represents millions of years of evolution in an environment where prey learned to fight back. Tigers didn't evolve to hunt slow, stupid animals. They evolved to hunt prey that could think, that could use tools, that could band together to defend themselves. The room erupted in argument. Some said it was too dangerous. Others said tigers were endangered, that using one for alien games was wrong. Hayes pointed out that tigers were smaller than bears, less armored than crocodiles. But Okoye held up his hand for silence. Dr. Berg, explain to me why this matters. These aliens have probably seen thousands of predators from hundreds of worlds. Why would a tiger impress them? Berg leaned forward. Because tigers learn to hunt humans. And humans learn to hunt back. That kind of evolutionary pressure where predator and prey are both intelligent, both adaptable, both deadly, that's rare in the universe. Most apex predators either wipe out their competition or reach an equilibrium. But on Earth, predators and humans pushed each other to evolve faster, smarter, more creative. A tiger represents that pressure, that relationship. And if these aliens want to know what Earth produced, they need to understand that our apex predators didn't just survive. They survived us. The room went quiet. Hayes studied Berg with new respect. Okoye looked at the faces around the table, seeing agreement slowly forming. The decision was made. Earth would send Shearer. Now they just had to hope a tiger could stand against whatever horrors the galaxy considered its champions. Metal and glass formed a sphere in orbit around Earth, built by alien machines in less than 3 days. The biodome stretched half a kilometer across. Its interior divided into sections that could become forest, desert, ocean, or any environment the Council required. Cameras floated throughout the space, broadcasting to billions of viewers across the galaxy. This was entertainment for some species, politics for others. But for Earth, it was a test they could not afford to fail. Berg stood in the observation deck with Hayes and Okoye, watching the first predator enter the arena below. The thornback from the Drexel homeworld looked like someone had crossed a rhinoceros with a tank and then added spikes. Its armored hide gleamed under the artificial sunlight as it charged through the forest environment, smashing trees like they were twigs. The simulated prey creatures, small deer-like animals made of hard light and force fields, scattered in panic. The thornback caught one with its horn, lifting it off the ground before slamming it down with bone-crushing force. Efficient, Hayes muttered, but not particularly smart. The Drexel delegation cheered from their section of the observation deck. Their champion had completed the hunting trial in 4 minutes, demonstrating raw power and aggression. The prey animals had no chance against something that could simply bulldoze through any obstacle. Next came the Deepjaw from the aquatic Solmari world. The arena transformed, filling with water and coral structures. The creature looked like someone had taken a shark, an octopus, and a nightmare, then blended them together. Bioluminescent patterns rippled across its body as it moved through the water, using light to communicate with itself in a display of sophisticated planning. Even though there was only one Deepjaw in the arena, it hunted like a pack, using the coral to create ambush points and drive prey into killing zones. The prey animals died quickly, efficiently, without ever seeing the attack coming. Berg watched carefully, noting how each predator approached the trial. Power for the thornback, strategy for the Deepjaw. When the insectoid Krithin presented their shredwing, the arena became an aerial maze of floating platforms and updrafts. The shredwing, with its razor-sharp wings and compound eyes, demonstrated perfect three-dimensional hunting. It could track 12 prey animals simultaneously, processing information faster than any single-minded organism should be able to. The kills were surgical, precise, almost beautiful in their execution. Then came the Night Stalker, and the atmosphere in the observation deck changed. The Vostok champion entered the arena with movements that seemed wrong somehow, too smooth, too calculated. It stood on 2 powerful legs like a terrestrial theropod dinosaur, but its scales looked metallic. Its eyes burned with an intelligence that felt unnatural. Where the other predators had hunted, the Night Stalker conducted a massacre. It didn't just kill the prey animals. It studied them first, learning their patterns in seconds, then systematically eliminated them with techniques that seemed designed specifically to create fear. The prey animals tried to scatter, tried to hide, tried everything. Nothing worked. The Night Stalker anticipated every move, countered every defense, and left a trail of carnage that made even the hardened military observers uncomfortable. High Commander Sethril stood in his section of the observation deck, arms crossed, projecting satisfaction. "This is what 10,000 years of Vostok leadership looks like," he announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. The perfect apex predator, undefeated in trial after trial, generation after generation. Let us see what primitive Earth can offer to compare with perfection. Berg felt his stomach tighten. Cher was being prepared in the holding area below. The tiger had been transported from India carefully, with his veterinary team and handlers. But the stress of space travel and alien environments was taking its toll. When the time came to enter the arena, Berg went down to see him personally. The holding cell was larger than expected, with temperature controls and familiar smells pumped in to keep Cher calm. But the tiger paced restlessly, his massive body tense with anxiety. Priya Mehta, the researcher who had worked with Cher since he was a cub, sat near the entrance looking worried. "He's asking for me," she said quietly. "He keeps looking at the door, waiting for me to take him out. He doesn't understand why he's here." "Can you go in with him?" Berg asked. They said no. The rules state that apex predators must perform alone to demonstrate individual capability. Having a handler would disqualify him. Priya looked like she might cry. "He's going to be terrified out there." Berg knelt down near the transparent barrier and Cher's pacing stopped. The tiger walked over, pressing his massive head against the barrier where Berg's hand rested on the other side. The purr that rumbled through the material was barely audible, but Berg felt it in his chest. "I know, big guy," Berg whispered. "I know this is scary, but I need you to trust us, just for a little while longer." The arena transformation began, shifting into a mixed environment that combined forest, grassland, and rock formations. The universal terrain meant to test adaptability. Cher was released into the space, and immediately every camera focused on him. The tiger stood still for a long moment, processing the unfamiliar environment. Then he did something none of the other predators had done. He disappeared, not literally. Cher was still there, still visible to the cameras, but he seemed to fade into the landscape in a way that made observers rub their eyes. Where the alien predators had announced their presence with dominance displays and aggressive postures, Cher simply became part of the terrain. He used shadows that shouldn't have been deep enough to hide him. He moved through grass that should have revealed his position. He waited with a patience that the timekeeping system struggled to measure. When he hunted, it was nothing like the spectacular displays the other predators had shown. There were no charges, no aerial acrobatics, no bioluminescent patterns. Cher stalked his prey with techniques refined by millions of years of evolution, then struck with explosive speed before vanishing again. Each kill was quick, efficient, and nearly invisible until the moment of contact. The observers grew quiet. This wasn't the performance they had expected. The Thornback had been impressive. The Deepjaw had been sophisticated. The Shredwing had been precise. The Night Stalker had been terrifying. But Cher was something else entirely. He hunted like something that had spent its entire evolutionary history being hunted in return, by prey smart enough to set traps, use fire, and coordinate group defenses. When Cher looked up at the observation deck between kills, several council members stepped back from the glass. The tiger's eyes held an intelligence that was fundamentally different from the Night Stalker's calculated menace. It wasn't the look of a perfect weapon. It was the look of a survivor who had learned to read body language, predict intentions, and understand that the most dangerous prey were the ones who looked back. High Commander Sethral's confident expression faltered slightly. He had seen thousands of apex predators in his career, but he had never seen one quite like this. The Garden District of the Council ship grew plants from 17 different worlds, each section carefully controlled for atmosphere, light, and temperature. Speaker Trill of the Krithen preferred this space for private conversations because the rustling leaves disrupted audio surveillance and the complex ecosystem confused visual tracking. Today, Trill sat among the purple ferns from home, mandibles clicking softly in thought while reviewing data streams on a portable console. The numbers told a story that made Trill's compound eyes narrow with anger. Genetic markers in the Night Stalker's DNA showed patterns that should not exist in nature. Chromosome modifications dated back exactly 3,214 years, coinciding with the Vostok's sudden rise to council leadership. Cross-reference checks revealed something even more disturbing. The Night Stalker's base genome matched a species called Shadowrunners that had gone extinct on the Vostok homeworld 3,100 years ago. Not extinct naturally, eliminated systematically with only their genetic material preserved in Vostok military biolabs. The Apex trial was a lie. The Vostok had not evolved alongside the galaxy's most fearsome predator. They had built one specifically to intimidate other species into submission, then erase the evidence of their manipulation. Every species that had participated in the Apex trial for the past 3,000 years had been competing in a rigged game, measuring their natural evolutionary achievements against Vostok genetic engineering. Trill clicked a private communication request and waited. Ambassador Okoye's face appeared on the screen, looking tired but alert. Behind him, the lights of Earth glowed through a viewport. "Speaker Trill," Okoye said carefully. "This is an unexpected contact. I hope there hasn't been a problem with the trial protocols." "No problem with protocols, Ambassador, but I have information your species should know before proceeding further." Trill transmitted the genetic data with a gesture. "The Night Stalker is not a natural species. It was created by the Vostok specifically for the Apex trial. Every competition Earth is participating in has been designed to reinforce Vostok dominance through deception." Okoye studied the data in silence, his expression hardening. "How long have you known this?" "The Krithan have suspected for generations, but proof was difficult to obtain. The Vostok Control Council security systems. They monitor communications. They restrict access to historical genetic databases. Your Tiger's performance finally gave us the excuse to run deep analysis protocols on all apex predator genome sequences. The comparison revealed the truth. Why tell us? We're newcomers. We have no power here." Trill's mandibles spread in what humans would have recognized as a bitter smile. "Precisely because you are newcomers. You have not yet learned to accept the way things are. The Krithan are tired of this deception, but we lack the political strength to challenge the Vostok alone. Perhaps Earth's fresh perspective will provide what we could not." The communication ended, leaving Okoye staring at the genetic data with growing understanding. The Apex trial was never about evolutionary strength. It was about maintaining power through fear and spectacle, and humanity had walked right into a trap designed to keep primitive species in their place. Meanwhile, in the animal holding area, Berg sat with Priya discussing a problem that seemed minor compared to galactic politics, but felt immediate and urgent. Cher was not doing well. The tiger had performed adequately in the first trial, but his stress levels were climbing. He refused to eat. He paced constantly. His handlers reported that he spent hours staring at the door, clearly looking for Priya. "Tigers are solitary in the wild," Hayes said, reviewing the medical data with frustration. "How is it possible he's this attached to one person?" "Because Cher isn't wild," Priya explained patiently, having repeated this same information a dozen times already. "He was born in captivity from parents who were part of the rewilding program. I've worked with him since he was 3 months old. Tigers imprint on their caregivers more strongly than most people realize. In his mind, I'm part of his family group. Separating us is causing genuine psychological distress." Berg looked at the tiger through the transparent barrier. Cher lay in his enclosure looking miserable, his usual grace replaced by obvious anxiety. The contrast with the alien predators was striking. The thornback, deep-jaw, shredwing, and night stalker all occupied their holding cells like prisoners tolerating temporary confinement. They watched their handlers with suspicion or outright hostility, but Cher looked at humans with trust and waited for comfort that was not permitted to come. "This changes the entire context," Berg said quietly. "The aliens brought predators that view their handlers as threats to be endured. We brought one that views humans as family. That's not a weakness. That's the entire point of what makes Earth different." Hayes frowned. "Explain." "Every apex predator up there evolved in isolation from sentient tool users. They're the undisputed top of their food chains because they never had to compete with anything smart enough to fight back effectively. But Earth's apex predators evolved alongside humans. They had to learn to predict human behavior, avoid human settlements, understand human cooperation, and eventually, humans became powerful enough that we could have eliminated every large predator on the planet. We had the weapons, the numbers, the technology, but we chose not to. We chose conservation instead of extinction. That choice, that relationship, it shaped both species. And Cher represents that relationship," Okoye said, entering the holding area with a grim expression. "Which is fortunate because I just learned the entire Apex trial is based on fraud. The Night Stalker is genetically engineered. The Vostok have been running a propaganda exercise for 3,000 years. And every species on the council has been too intimidated to call them out on it. He explained the information from Speaker Trill while the others listened in growing anger. The implications were staggering. Earth was not just participating in a test. They were being absorbed into a system specifically designed to maintain Vostok supremacy through fear of their manufactured super predator. So what do we do? Hayes asked. Expose them? Refuse to continue? Neither, Berg said slowly, an idea forming. We finish the trial, but we change what we're demonstrating. The Vostok want to show that apex predators are about dominance and fear. We show them that Earth's apex predator is about something else entirely. Something they've never seen before. And what's that? Priya asked. Berg looked at Cher, still waiting patiently for comfort. Choice. We show them a predator that chooses cooperation over dominance. But to do that, we need to change the rules slightly. For the next trial, Priya, you're going into the arena with him. They'll never allow it, Hayes objected. Then we make them allow it, Okoye said, understanding Berg's plan. We argue that unlike the alien predators, Cher was never isolated from humans because humans are part of what he is. The relationship is the demonstration, not a violation of it. If they refuse, we expose the Night Stalker's origins immediately and force the entire trial into question. The 3 humans and 1 Krathen had accidentally formed an alliance against the oldest power in the galaxy. They had 1 tiger, 1 scientist, 1 soldier, 1 diplomat, and 1 insectoid truth-seeker against 3,000 years of institutional deception. But they also had something the Vostok had never accounted for in their careful planning. They had a predator who trusted them, and that trust was about to change everything. Red emergency lighting pulsed through the council chambers as delegates shouted over each other in 17 different languages, none of them agreeing on anything except that the Apex trial had become a disaster. High Commander Sethril stood at the center of the chaos, his scales darkening with rage as Speaker Trill's genetic evidence played on every screen in the room. The proof was irrefutable. The Night Stalker was not natural. The Vostok had lied for 3,000 years. But Sethril was not a military commander because he panicked easily. He raised 1 clawed hand and waited for the noise to subside. When he spoke, his voice carried across the chamber with practiced authority. Yes, the Night Stalker was enhanced. This is true. But enhancement is not creation. We took a species that already existed and made it better, stronger, more efficient. Is this not what evolution does naturally over millions of years? We simply accelerated the process. Every species here has modified their biology through technology. The Solmari use genetic therapy to survive deeper ocean pressures. The Krathen have neural implants to improve hive communication. Even humans use medicine to overcome their biological limitations. Where is the line between natural and artificial? The Apex trial has always been about demonstrating capability, not debating philosophical purity. The argument was clever, Berg had to admit. Watching from the human observation section, Sethril was reframing the conversation away from deception and toward transhumanism. If he could convince the Council that genetic enhancement was merely advanced evolution, then the Night Stalker's origins became irrelevant. The trial could continue with Vostok dominance intact, but Okoye was ready. He stood and requested permission to speak, which the Council granted with obvious reluctance. Earth was the newest member, the most primitive, the least significant. But they were also the species that had exposed the Vostok lie, and that gave them temporary authority. High Commander Sethril makes an interesting point about the line between natural and artificial. Okoye began, his voice calm but carrying. So let me ask a direct question. Can you touch the Night Stalker? Sethril's expression flickered with confusion. What? Can you physically touch your apex predator without protective equipment? Can you enter its enclosure safely? Can you sit with it, rest your hand on its head, trust it not to kill you? The chamber went quiet. Every delegate understood where this was going. Sethril's jaw tightened. The Night Stalker is a predator, not a pet. Treating it as such would be disrespectful to its nature. That is not what I asked. Can you touch it, yes or no? No species can safely touch their apex predator. That is not what the trial measures. Then perhaps it should be, Okoye said, because Earth can. And we propose a new trial to demonstrate exactly that. Each apex predator will face a volunteer from their own species in a non-lethal interaction. No barriers, no weapons, no protective gear, just predator and person, to see what relationship exists between them. If apex predators truly represent the evolutionary strength of their homeworld, then surely that relationship matters more than killing efficiency. The council erupted in argument again. The Drexel claimed it was absurd to expect anyone to approach a thornback without armor. The Solmari insisted their Deepjaw would view any swimmer as prey. The Krithin remained neutral, watching carefully, and the Vostok delegation looked deeply uncomfortable because everyone in the room understood what Okoye was really asking. Can you trust what you created, or did you just build a weapon? Sethril tried to shut down the proposal, arguing that it violated traditional trial protocols, but Speaker Trill interrupted with a voice like grinding stones. The Vostok have already violated traditional protocols by presenting an artificial organism. Earth's proposal is fair. We vote now on whether to proceed with this additional trial. All in favor? The vote was closer than anyone expected, but it passed. The Krithin voted yes immediately. The Solmari abstained, unwilling to commit. The Drexel delegation split, with younger members supporting the change despite their elders' protests. And surprisingly, 3 junior Vostok councilors voted yes, over Sethril's furious objections. The tide was turning slowly, against 3,000 years of established power. The arena was reconfigured for the new trial. No prey animals this time. No obstacles or environments, just empty space and 2 beings. The Drexel went first, sending their most experienced handler into the enclosure with the thornback. The massive creature tolerated the approach, but clearly viewed the handler as a potential threat. The Drexel kept his distance, demonstrating dominance through posture and sound but never actually touching the predator. The interaction lasted 90 seconds before the handler retreated, looking relieved to have survived. The Solmari attempt was even briefer. Their handler entered the water tank and the Deepjaw immediately went into hunting mode, forcing the Solmari to exit rapidly before the situation became dangerous. The demonstration proved what everyone already knew. The Deepjaw saw Solmari as food, relationship or not. The Krithin declined to participate, with Speaker Trill explaining that shredwings were non-sentient hive organisms that did not form individual relationships. The honesty was refreshing after watching 2 species pretend they had bonds with predators that clearly wanted to kill them. Then came the Night Stalker, and Sethril made a decision that revealed his desperation. Instead of entering himself, he sent a junior handler named Teskra, a young Vostok who had voted against him earlier. The political calculation was obvious. If Teskra succeeded, Sethril could claim victory. If Teskra failed, the commander could blame incompetence rather than admitting the Night Stalker was uncontrollable. Teskra entered the arena alone, approaching the Night Stalker with visible fear. The predator watched the young Vostok with cold intelligence, calculating, measuring. For a moment it seemed like Teskra might succeed through sheer courage. Then the Night Stalker moved, flowing toward the Vostok with liquid grace. Not attacking. Just closing distance, asserting dominance. Reminding everyone watching that it had been designed for one purpose, making sentient beings feel small and helpless. Teskra froze, instinct overriding training. The Night Stalker circled once, then dismissed the Vostok as beneath notice, returning to the center of the arena like a king tolerating a peasant's presence. The message was clear. The Night Stalker did not have handlers. It had servants who existed at its pleasure. Sethril tried to claim victory anyway, arguing that Teskra had survived the interaction. But everyone in the observation deck knew the truth. The Night Stalker had chosen not to kill. That was not the same as choosing to trust. It was simply a weapon that had not yet been fired. Now came Earth's turn, and Berg made his request again, louder this time so every delegate could hear. We want to send Dr. Priya Mehta into the arena with Sherry. She has worked with him since he was young. She understands him, and he trusts her. That relationship is what we want to demonstrate. Sethril tried to object, claiming it proved Earth's predator was defective, domesticated, weak, but his argument had lost its power. The other delegates wanted to see what would happen. They wanted to know if an apex predator could actually trust its companion species, because none of them had ever seen it before. The arena doors opened. Priya walked in alone to meet a tiger who could kill her in seconds, and Sher, finally seeing his friend after days of confusion and stress, did something that would be recorded in galactic history archives for the next 1,000 years. He ran to her, not as a predator approaching prey, but as a friend greeting someone beloved. When he reached her, he pressed his massive head against her chest and began to purr so loudly the vibration registered on the arena's seismic sensors. Priya wrapped her arms around his neck and the tiger closed his eyes, finally at peace in a strange place far from home. The observation deck was completely silent. They had expected many things. Violence, fear, dominance, submission, but not this. Never this. An apex predator choosing affection over aggression, choosing trust over intimidation. The simplicity of it was devastating to watch. Dawn light filtered through the biodome's external shields, creating patterns that looked almost like sunrise on Earth. Berg stood at the observation window watching maintenance drones clean the arena below, preparing it for what everyone knew would be the final demonstration. Around him, delegates from across the galaxy gathered in small groups, speaking quietly about what they had witnessed. The mood felt different now, uncertain in a way it had not been before. 3,000 years of certainty about the Apex trial had crumbled in 3 days because of one tiger who purred instead of roared. Sethril appeared at the far end of the observation deck, surrounded by Vostok military personnel. His scales had darkened to almost black, a sign of extreme stress in his species. He looked like someone watching a carefully constructed building collapse one brick at a time. But he still had one argument left, one final card to play to salvage Vostok's supremacy. "The trial has been illuminating," Sethril announced, his voice projecting across the observation deck. "Earth has shown us something unusual, a predator that tolerates handling by its creators. This is interesting from an evolutionary perspective. It suggests humans have successfully domesticated a dangerous species, which demonstrates advanced social capability. However, domestication is not dominance. A pet is not an apex predator. It is a controlled subordinate." He paused, letting the words sink in. Several delegates nodded, starting to see his logic. Sethril was trying to reframe Shear's trust as weakness rather than strength. If he could convince the council that Earth had merely trained a large cat to behave, then the tiger's demonstration lost its impact. "I propose one final trial," Sethril continued, "not between species but within them. Each apex predator will face a volunteer from its own world that it does not know well. The Thornback will meet a Drexel it has never encountered. The Deepjaw will face an unfamiliar Solmari, and Earth's tiger will interact with a human stranger. This will prove whether these predators demonstrate genuine apex characteristics or merely conditioned responses to familiar handlers." Berg felt his stomach drop. It was a brilliant trap. Cher knew Priya trusted her, had worked with her for years. But put him in a stressful environment with a stranger, and he would likely revert to natural predator responses. Any tiger would. The test was designed to show that Shear's previous behavior was training, not relationship. Hayes leaned close to Berg and whispered, "Can we refuse?" "Not without looking like we're hiding something," Berg replied quietly. "Sethril knows that." Okoye studied the Vostok commander for a long moment, then spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. "We accept, but we choose who represents humanity. Dr. Richard Berg will enter the arena with Cher." Berg's head snapped around to stare at Okoye. "What? You explained to us why tigers matter," Okoye said calmly. "Now show everyone else. Show them what it means that Earth's apex predators evolved alongside humanity, instead of in isolation from us." Berg wanted to argue, wanted to point out that he was not Shear's handler, had no special training, had only met the tiger a few times in passing. But he understood what Okoye was doing. If Priya went in again, Sethril would claim it proved nothing. But if Berg, a relative stranger, could interact with Cher safely, it would demonstrate something profound about the relationship between humans and apex predators. The other trials proceeded first. The Drexel sent a junior zoologist to approach the Thornback, and the massive creature reacted with immediate aggression, forcing the Drexile to retreat behind energy barriers. The demonstration was mercifully brief. The Solmari did not even attempt their trial, conceding that the Deepjaw would attack any Solmari it did not recognize. The Krithans still declined to participate, maintaining that their Shredwing operated on entirely different social principles. Then came the Night Stalker. And once again Sethril sent Teskra rather than entering himself. The young Vostok walked into the arena looking like someone approaching an execution. The Night Stalker watched the approach with those cold, calculating eyes. This time it did not just circle. It moved closer, testing, pushing, asserting absolute dominance over the smaller Vostok. Teskra held position through sheer willpower, but everyone watching could see the terror in the young council member's posture. The Night Stalker made its point clearly. It tolerated Vostok presence because it chose to, not because any bond existed. It was a weapon that had learned to recognize its makers, nothing more. The interaction ended with Teskra backing away slowly while the Predator watched with what looked disturbingly like amusement. Now Berg stood at the arena entrance, heart pounding, palms sweating. Inside the holding area, Cher paced restlessly. The tiger looked better than he had in days, his interaction with Priya having calmed him considerably. But he was still stressed, still in an unfamiliar environment, still surrounded by strange smells and sounds and beings. Berg entered through the access door and heard it seal behind him. The arena was suddenly very quiet. Above, delegates pressed against the observation windows. Cameras focused from every angle. Billions of beings across the galaxy watched with anticipation. Cher noticed him immediately. The tiger stopped pacing and turned, studying this human with intense focus. Berg recognized the look. It was the same expression predators got when they evaluated potential threat or prey, assessing size, body language, vulnerability, deciding whether this was something to avoid, attack, or ignore. Berg's training screamed at him to maintain eye contact, show confidence, project dominance. Every instruction for handling dangerous predators said to never show weakness. But Berg did something different. He walked to the center of the arena and sat down on the ground, cross-legged, making himself deliberately vulnerable. He turned his head slightly to the side, breaking direct eye contact. And he waited. Cher approached slowly, circling once, then twice. The tiger was massive up close, each paw bigger than Berg's head, muscles rippling under striped fur. One swipe could kill, one bite could crush bones. Berg kept his breathing steady, kept his posture relaxed, and waited for Cher to make a choice. The tiger stopped circling and stood directly in front of Berg, close enough that the human could feel the heat radiating from the predator's body, close enough to smell the distinct scent of tiger, something like rain on sun-warmed stone, close enough to die if Cher decided the stranger was a threat. Then the tiger did something that made Sethral's scales go completely white. Cher lowered his head and rested it on Berg's lap. The weight was enormous, the trust absolute. Berg reached up slowly and scratched behind the tiger's ears, exactly where Priya had shown him days ago. Cher's eyes closed. A rumble started deep in his chest, building, growing, until the purr resonated through the arena like distant thunder. Berg looked up at the observation deck, at all the alien faces staring down in disbelief. He spoke clearly, knowing his voice was being broadcast across the galaxy. "This is Cher. He's never met me before today. He doesn't know me, but he knows humans. He knows that humans can choose to protect instead of destroy. He knows that humans decided tigers were worth saving, even when we had the power to eliminate them. That knowledge is in his genes, built through thousands of generations of evolution alongside our species. This is not training. This is not domestication. This is relationship. This is what happens when apex predators evolve with sentient beings who eventually decided cooperation was better than extinction." He continued, his hand still scratching the tiger's massive head. "Every species here brought their most dangerous predator to prove their worth. You brought weapons and showed us dominance. We brought a tiger and showed you trust. That is Earth's strength. Not that we can create fierce predators, but that we learned to live alongside them. That we chose to protect them when we could have destroyed them. That our apex predators remember that choice and respond to it." Cher opened his eyes and looked directly at the observation deck, at all the beings watching. His gaze held no aggression, no fear, just the calm confidence of a predator who had learned that humans, these strange tool users who had once hunted his ancestors, had eventually become something else. Protectors, partners, friends. Silence held the council chambers like a physical weight pressing down on everyone present. Berg stood at the speaker's platform with Okoye and Hayes beside him, facing delegates from dozens of worlds who still looked stunned by what they had witnessed. Above them, holographic displays replayed the moment endlessly. A tiger purring with its head in a stranger's lap, choosing trust over instinct, relationship over isolation. The image was spreading across the galaxy faster than light, carried by quantum communication networks to billions of watching beings. High Commander Sethral sat in his delegation's section, looking like he had aged 100 years in 3 days. His carefully constructed system of dominance and fear had been dismantled by one tiger, who refused to behave like a weapon. Around him, other Vostok council members whispered urgently, some angry, some thoughtful. The fractures in Vastok unity were becoming visible for the first time in 3,000 years. Speaker Trill activated the chamber's communication system, mandibles clicking with satisfaction. The Council will now hear Earth's formal statement regarding membership and participation in future Apex trials. Ambassador Okoye, you have the floor. Okoye stepped forward, his expression grave. Thank you, Speaker Trill. Earth has considered the implications of joining the Galactic Council under current protocols. We have witnessed the Apex trial, participated in its demonstrations, and learned its true purpose. And we must respectfully decline formal membership. The chamber erupted in shocked murmuring. Declining a council seat was virtually unprecedented. Species fought for generations to earn recognition. Earth was rejecting it after 3 days. Okoye continued over the noise. We decline because we cannot participate in good conscience in a system built on deception and intimidation. The Apex trial was never about measuring evolutionary strength. It was about maintaining Vastok supremacy through fear of an engineered super predator. We cannot and will not legitimize that system by accepting a seat earned through participation in fraud. Sethril tried to interrupt, but Okoye held up a hand. However, we do not reject the Galactic Council entirely. Instead, we propose fundamental reform. Species should be evaluated based on their stewardship of their homeworlds, their relationships with their ecosystems, and their ability to maintain balance rather than enforce dominance. A civilization's strength should be measured by what it protects, not what it destroys. This is radical philosophy from a species barely capable of leaving their own planet, Sethril snapped. You would judge civilizations thousands of years older than your own based on your primitive notions of conservation? The galaxy does not run on sentiment and soft-heartedness. Berg stepped forward, surprising everyone by requesting permission to speak. As a scientist rather than a diplomat, he had no official standing, but the Council allowed it. Commander Sethril calls our approach primitive and sentimental. But I would ask him a simple question. Can you sustain the Night Stalker indefinitely? Sethril's expression flickered with confusion. What do you mean? I mean, does your apex predator reproduce naturally? Can it maintain a population without constant Vastok intervention? Or do you have to keep creating new Night Stalkers in laboratories because they cannot sustain themselves? The silence that followed was damning. Sethril's scales darkened further. Berg continued. Sheer is part of a wild population that sustains itself naturally. Tigers have existed for millions of years, and will exist for millions more if humans continue protecting them. Your Night Stalker exists only as long as Vastok genetic engineers maintain it. That is not apex predator success. That is dependency. You created a weapon but called it evolution, and in doing so, you have forgotten what real evolutionary strength looks like. The Krithans support Earth's proposal for council reform, Speaker Trill announced suddenly. We have participated in this deceptive system for too long. It is time for change. One by one, other species began voicing support. The Solmari, tired of pretending their deep jaw represented anything but predatory instinct. The Drexel, whose younger members had been questioning traditional values for decades. Even 3 Vastok junior counselors, including Teskra, broke ranks to support reform, over Sethril's furious objections. The vote was close, but decisive. The Galactic Council would undergo restructuring. The Apex trial would be suspended pending review. New evaluation criteria would be developed, focusing on ecological stewardship rather than predatory dominance. The Vastok would lose their permanent leadership position, rotating council chairs among species based on merit rather than intimidation. Sethril left the chamber without speaking, his delegation fractured behind him. But young Teskra remained, approaching the human delegation with visible nervousness. Ambassador Okoye, I must apologize for my species' deception. We were taught that the Night Stalker represented Vastok superiority, that dominance was the only measure of worth. Your tiger showed us something we had forgotten. Real strength is not about making others fear you. It is about building relationships that endure across generations. What will happen to the Night Stalker? Priya asked quietly, having joined the group after Cher was returned to his holding area. Teskra's expression was difficult to read, but seemed sad. We do not know. The Night Stalker cannot survive without Vastok genetic support. It was designed for intimidation, not independence. Perhaps that is its tragedy and ours. We created something that will die with our old way of thinking. The council adjourned, and Earth's delegation made preparations to return home. The biodome would be dismantled, the arena dissolved, the evidence of humanity's brief visit to the galactic stage erased from orbit, but the impact would remain in the historical records and in the minds of billions who watched a tiger choose trust over violence. 6 months later, Berg stood in the rewilding preserve in India, watching Sheer move through morning mist with the grace of liquid shadow. Priya was beside him, along with Hayes and Okoye, who had become unlikely friends through their shared experience. The tiger paused at the forest edge, looking back at them for a moment before disappearing into the trees. "Do you think he remembers?" Hayes asked. "Does he know what he did up there?" "No," Berg said. "And that is what makes it perfect." He did not try to change anything. He just was himself, a predator that evolved alongside humans long enough to learn that cooperation was better than conflict, that trust was safer than isolation. He demonstrated those principles without understanding them, and that made them undeniable. Okoye checked his communication device. The Council's restructuring is proceeding faster than anyone expected. 17 species have submitted proposals for new evaluation frameworks. The Krythan are leading a committee to develop ecological stewardship standards. Even the Vastok are participating, though Sethril resigned his position. Teskra is representing them now. "Will it last?" Priya asked. "Maybe," Okoye replied. "Maybe not. But we started something that will not be forgotten. We showed the galaxy a different way of measuring strength, not through what we can destroy, but through what we choose to protect." In the forest, Sheer's roar echoed through the morning air, not a challenge or a warning, just a simple announcement of existence. The sound carried across the valley, powerful and primal and absolutely free, somewhere above Earth's atmosphere. Listening stations recorded that roar and broadcast it across quantum communication networks to distant worlds. The sound reached species who had never heard a tiger before, who had no context for understanding it. But they listened anyway, feeling something shift in their understanding of what apex predators could be, because that roar was not a threat. It was a declaration. Here I am, I exist. I survived, and the beings who once hunted me now protect me, not because I am weak, but because they chose to be strong in a different way. That choice, more than any weapon or technology or genetic enhancement, was what made humanity worthy of recognition among the stars, not their ability to create destruction, but their decision to build preservation, not their power to dominate, but their wisdom to cooperate, not what they could take from the universe, but what they could give back to it. Berg, Hayes, Okoye, and Priya stood together watching the forest where Sheer had vanished. Behind them, other tigers moved through the preserve, part of a growing population that existed because humans decided extinction was unacceptable. Above them, stars glittered in the morning sky, and somewhere among those stars, the galaxy was beginning to rethink 3,000 years of assumptions about what strength really meant, all because of one tiger who purred instead of roared when a stranger offered trust. That simple choice, that moment of connection between predator and person, had sparked a revolution more powerful than any weapon the galaxy had ever known. The revolution of remembering that the strongest civilizations are not the ones who conquer everything, but the ones who protect what matters most. And Earth had just taught the galaxy that lesson, delivered by a Bengal tiger who would never understand the significance of what he represented. Sheer would live out his life in the Indian forest, hunting and sleeping and existing as tigers had for millions of years, but his impact would echo across the stars for generations. A reminder that true apex predators are measured not by what they kill, but by what they choose to spare.